To watch these important lessons, subscribe to DP Education's YouTube channel right now. Click on the bell icon to stay updated on the latest lessons. Sri Lanka's largest free online school, DP Education.
So my dear children, now we are going to start our second chapter related to the evolutionary process. This is the 9th lesson in your grade 9 science syllabus. So within the second chapter, like I said in the previous chapter, my dear children, we'll be focusing about how does the life has originated within our surface of the earth. Okay. So within the first chapter, my dear children, we discussed how does the earth has got created in the first place. Right? With the creation of the universe from the Big Bang, we discuss how does the earth has got created. Okay, and what are the conditions or what are the special facts that can be observed within the primitive earth. So we discussed about those things in the first or the previous chapter, my dear children. Now in the second chapter, we'll be mainly discussing about how does the life has been originated within the earth. Okay, so we'll be mainly focusing the theories related to the origination of life in the earth. Okay, so here it is given that there are many beliefs and theories on origin of life on the earth. It is believed that about 3.5 billion years ago, life originated on the earth. So it is believed that about 3.5 billion years ago, about 4.5 billion years ago, Earth was created. About 3.5 billion years ago, life has originated on the Earth. So there is a 1 billion gap. Okay, our Earth was there without any life for about 1 billion years. Okay, for about 1 billion years. So within that 1 billion years, my dear children, all the factors necessary for the creation of life, right, was getting collected in smaller contents. After that, about 3.5 billions of years ago, what has happened? The first life forms on the earth was originated. So we'll be mainly focusing about the theories related in creation of the earth, my dear children. So here, so life originated on the earth. So let us consider some theories about the origin of life. So let's study what are the theories related to the origin of life within the earth. Number 1, the theory of special creation. Theory of special creation. So the first and foremost theory related to the creation of life on the earth, my dear children, is the first and foremost theory, the theory of special creation. The theory of special creation, we discussed this thing within the beginning of our lesson part. I told you that it is assumed, actually this thing, these views are mainly somewhat religious views, my dear children. Okay, right? However, we can't neglect those things, right? If there is a theory related to a certain thing, right, we can't neglect those things. It's because that if it is being disproved, then it is okay, we can neglect. But however, there was no enough evidence. If there is no enough evidence to prove it, then my dear children, it may true or may not be true. So we don't know what is the true or falsehood of the statement. So therefore, it is okay to study these things. Okay, so somewhat controversial thing. This theory of a special creation is somewhat controversial thing. It's because this is mainly focusing that, like I said in the previous chapter, it is assumed that our earth has, within this theory, people assume, or these people, or the people who introduced this theory, they believe that the universe has been created from a supernatural force, right? Universe has been created by a supernatural force. It can be a celestial being, like now we are three-dimensional organisms. No, usually we can observe only 3 dimensions. Okay, so there can be other different kinds of organisms who are somewhat advanced, right? Some may have different advanced technologies, right? There can be other types, other forms of lives, right? We don't know. Like I said in the beginning of the lesson, my dear children, there are several galaxies in our universe. There are several solar systems and planets and stars in our universe. So we don't know like what kind of organisms who are living in other different kinds of galaxies or planets. There cannot sometimes there cannot be any other organisms. Sometimes there can be even more advanced organisms. So we don't know. Okay, so theory of special creation states that our universe and the planet Earth and the life on planet Earth is created mainly because of the action of a supernatural force. This can be an alien or any other entity. Okay, a supernatural entity. We don't know. It is assumed that almost all the life forms who are living in the earth, right, created by a supernatural force. But however, my dear children, there are no scientific proofs for these things. Okay, for this theory there was no scientific proof. So therefore scientists have neglected this theory of special creation. Scientists have neglected. If there were at least like several information or say at least like few proofs, then the scientists would have experimented on this thing and go beyond. But however, they have neglected because there was no evidence to show that. Okay, so the theory of special creation, my dear children, no longer being accepted as the reason for the origin of the life in our earth. Okay, so it's been totally neglected. Okay, so let's go for the things contained in theory of special creation then. So according to this theory, all organisms on earth were created by a supernatural power. A supernatural being or else a supernatural power created the whole universe and the organisms who are living on the earth. This is the belief. Okay. However, my dear children, since there is no scientific evidence to prove this theory, scientists do not pay attention to it. So scientists do not pay attention to it. It's because that there was no proofs, right? There are no any evidence to show that. Okay. So the theory of special creation is being neglected by the scientific society. Okay. So scientific society is not taking this theory of special creation as a reason for the creation of life in our earth. Okay, so the theory of special creation can be illustrated like this. Because of a certain entity, we don't know like what kind of an entity, that entity created all the organisms in our earth like this. Okay, so this entity can be very much powerful, right? So we are only three-dimensional organisms. We don't know what are the other dimensions and we don't know what are the other kinds of things that are located in our universe. So there can be different other types of powers as well. We don't know. We are not sensitive to those energies and we are not sensitive to those powers. Okay. So my dear children, this belief or this special creation state like that. A certain entity created whole universe like this, entire earth, and the almost all the organisms living on the earth created by this certain entity. So this is the theory of special creation illustration. Okay, just by through a special kind of a power or supernatural force, the certain entity created the entire universe and the planet and other celestial objects. So this is the theory of special creation. Okay, so remember, this has been neglected because of lack of evidence, my dear children, right? So this is the first and foremost theory, the special creation. Then the second one. The second theory related to the origin of life. So second one is given spontaneous generation theory. Spontaneous generation theory. Spontaneous means, my dear children, okay, spontaneous means like sudden, okay, sudden, or else in simple we can say that naturally, okay, automatically, right, naturally or automatically. Spontaneous means actually, here the spontaneous theory states that non-living things, right, non-living things came to life automatically or spontaneously. Okay, for an example, let's take a leaf, a guava leaf. Okay, let's take a leaf, a guava leaf. When the time is going to pass by, right, gradually because of factors and environmental conditions and weather patterns and so on, this guava leaf is going to come up with life and create a leaf insect. So that kind of a thing is presented by the spontaneous generation theory, right? Spontaneous generation theory. Small bit of meat, okay, small bit of meat, flesh, converted into maggots on a later day. So meat is getting converted to maggots, directly getting converted meat into maggots, spontaneously, automatically meat is getting converted to maggots. So meat, it's a non-living thing. Non-living thing is creating living things. This is the one which is referred as the spontaneous theory or the spontaneous generation theory. Okay, spontaneous generation theory. Then, my dear children, however, this theory was disproved scientifically by special scientists. Okay, so first of all, let's study about this spontaneous generation theory, and we'll focus about those things later. Okay, so here this theory states that life was originated from non-living things in a spontaneous manner. So like I said, my dear children, these things were generated because of the spontaneous, automatically, from non-living things. Automatically life has originated. Okay, so this is what do you mean by the spontaneous generation theory. So what are the examples? So like I said, my dear children, maggots created by waste meat. Okay, waste meat. Then plant leaves created insects. Then old clothes created rats. Okay, so these are examples which that earlier people gave, right, for the spontaneous generation theory. Maggots suddenly appeared from waste meat. So you know that actually this thing is going to happen in our normal environment as well, right? But however, my dear children, we can't say exactly that meat came into life in creating maggots. Okay, we can't exactly say that because there is no proof, no, right? If so, we have to prove it. Okay, but however, we can disprove it without any trouble. We'll be discussing that thing in the later part of the lesson. Okay, so up to now, you remember, for the spontaneous generation theory, earlier people gave these examples, right? But maggots created by waste meat. When you remove or when you throw away meat into our environment, right, these meat, they get separated into maggots. That was the idea of spontaneous generation. So meat was non-living. These non-living thing came to life automatically or spontaneously, right? Then the next one, plant leaves created insects, like leaf insects, right? So those insects were created mainly because of plant leaves. Okay, another example for the spontaneous generation theory. Another example. So plant leaves, when they fall down, they come into life. Okay, that's how different kinds of insects, like leaf insects, are getting created. It is assumed, those people, ancient people assumed, like that kind of a way is going to happen, or that kind of a thing is going to happen in creation of insects. Okay, ancient people, they thought like that. Okay, then the third example is old clothes. When you throw away clothes, right, different clothes, then finally they will come into life and they will create, or these old clothes will create what? Rats. Okay, old clothes will create rats. However, my dear children, up to your knowledge, even you can say that this thing is not possible, right? It's not going to happen at all. It's not possible. So, however, my dear children, these things should be proved with examples. If not, the people who are living in that time period will not buy it. So therefore, scientists should have to prove that this thing is not acceptable. So the scientist called Louis Pasteur, right? The scientist called Louis Pasteur did several experiments regarding the spontaneous creation, and he was able to successfully disprove this by using an experiment. Okay, so here it is given. The spontaneous generation theory has been effectively disproved by the experiments conducted by the scientist Louis Pasteur. So Louis Pasteur, he was able to successfully disprove this theorem or this theory related to spontaneous generation, my dear children. Okay, he did several experiments and he showed to the world that animals or organisms are not getting created because of these waste materials or non-living things. There should be a living material in the present in order to produce a living material, right? Actually, the word material is not probable. We have to use organisms. There should be a living organism in order to give out another living organism. Louis Pasteur showed that particular statement to the world by doing several experiments. He showed that maggots are not created because of the meat. He showed that plant leaves are not creating insects and clothes are not creating rats. He showed that in order to create a maggot, waste meat is not needed on almost all the times. Okay? If there are maggots, then maggots are created because of a different living entity, not because of waste meat, my dear children. He showed that these insects are getting created because of insects, not because of plant leaves. And rats are created because of the action of rats. Okay? Smaller rats are getting created. Small rats are getting created mainly because of the action of older rats. So there should be a generation of rats. Otherwise, it will not happen. So all clothes had no effect on creating rats. Okay, he showed these things to the world. So Louis Pasteur was the first scientist to conduct these experiments regarding the spontaneous generation and to disprove it. Okay, he successfully disproved it. Right, so this is about the second theory, my dear children. So second theory is related to spontaneous generation. Here, the people have stated that non-living things automatically came to life, right, and creating living materials. For examples, you can say these things. So this is spontaneous generation. Spontaneous generation. Spontaneous generation was disproved by the scientist called Louis Pasteur. Okay, right. So for your extra knowledge, a special slide is given in here with a figure. So this is the scientist Louis Pasteur. So this was the experiment conducted by the Louis Pasteur. Now let's see what is the experiment, my dear children. In order to show that life was not originated from non-living things. Okay, right. So here it is given. Louis Pasteur prepared an experiment to prove that spontaneous generation theory is not an acceptable theory. Similar amounts of sterilized nutritional media was added to two similar swan neck flasks. No growth of living organisms was observed. So what he did was, he took swan neck flasks, right? So these are the swan neck flasks. So add several growth media separately to these two flasks. Okay, then what he has done is, now this nutritional media means, my dear children, when you check these media, right, as they have plenty of nutrition, microorganisms can grow effectively within the media. Okay, so by adding this nutritional media, is going to check the presence of microorganisms. So he took swan neck flasks and add these nutritional media separately. Okay, then similar amounts of sterilized nutritional media was added. Now the other thing is that he took sterilized nutritional media. That means at the beginning, when he is going to insert these substances into the flasks, these have been sterilized. Sterilized means all the microorganisms and bacteria have been destroyed. That's what do you mean by the sterilized thing, right? Okay, so here sterilized nutritional media was added to two similar swan neck flasks. No growth of living organisms was observed, right? No growth of living organisms. So after some time, my dear children, there was no growth of living organisms. From the both, not from one, but from the both. Right? In the both flasks, we couldn't observe, Louis Pasteur couldn't observe the organisms. No growth of microorganisms. Okay. Then the next one. After about 1 year, neck of the one flask was broken and taken away. So after about 1 year, what he had done is, he had removed the neck. Okay, he had removed the neck and took it away. Okay, so you know that after removing the neck, this content or this nutritional media is getting exposed to the external environment. In the external environment, we can observe different kinds of microorganisms, right? So now what will happen? Microorganisms can freely enter to this system, and microorganisms can, without any trouble, they can reproduce within the nutritional media, as they have plenty of food and other necessary factors for the survival. So they will thrive on this particular media and they will reproduce. So now what will happen, my dear children? After some time, you can observe growth of microorganism within the flask. But however, within the sealed flask, you won't be able to observe microorganisms. However, the same particular media or same nutritional media is being added, and both have been sterilized. Sterilization means you can heat these things. Like this, you can heat without any trouble. So when heating, you know that all the microorganisms are going to die. So there are no any organisms within the system. They should come from outside. So microorganisms can enter to this system from outside, but not to this. So therefore, it is being proved that in order to create an organism, there should be organisms in the first place. Otherwise, new organisms are not getting created because of the non-living materials like these nutritional media. Those things are not going to create animals or organisms automatically, right? In order to create an animal or in order to create an organism, there should be organisms in the first place. This is like the egg and the chicken, right? Egg and the hen. In order to have an egg, there should be a hen in the first place. Most of you guys have heard this thing, this riddle. Who came first? Is it the egg or the hen? Actually, it is the hen. It should be the hen, right? The first and foremost, hen should come. And it is the one who is going to produce the egg. Egg is not the one which is getting created in the first place. And there is another factor. In order to create an egg, you know that there should be different kinds of chemicals and other substances, right? So egg shell is created with different kinds of chemicals and other substances. So this chemical is referred as calcium carbonate. Okay, and there are other substances as well. So in order to create these things, my dear children, there should be an organism. The organism is the hen. Hen is the one who is laying egg. So first and foremost, hen should come to the world to produce any kind of an egg. Okay, to produce any kind of an egg, hen is the first one who came to the world. So now, if someone is going to ask a question, who came first, egg or the hen? Hen is the correct answer. By evolutionary process, we can prove that thing. Okay, because to produce chemicals and other substances within the egg, hen should be there. Otherwise, the egg is not going to be produced naturally in the environment. Okay, right then. So my dear children, the microbial growth was visible in the flask without the neck, and no life appeared in the other flask. So here there was life, and in here life was absent, right? Life cannot be observed within the air sealed one over here. But however, when the neck has got broken after several years, right, after some time, what has happened? Microbial activities and growth of microorganisms could be observed. Then the conclusion was living organisms do not create spontaneously. This was accepted as true in 1862. So in 1862, this theory or this experiment was accepted by the world. Okay, and the theory of spontaneous generation has been neglected. Okay, it has been neglected, my dear children. So spontaneous generation theory is now been successfully disproved by the scientist called Louis Pasteur. Okay, so in 1862 he did several experiments regarding the spontaneous generation and he disproved it. Okay, so this is the experiment carried out by Louis Pasteur in disproving the spontaneous generation theory. Right, so we have discussed two theories now. Both the theories have been neglected. One theory has got neglected because of lack of evidence, which is the theory of special creation. The second theory, the theory of spontaneous generation, was successfully disproved by scientists. Okay, so both the theories have been neglected now. Both of these things have been neglected. Now, my dear children, the next one, the next theory. This is also a controversial theory, the third one. Okay, this is also somewhat controversial, means that there are still several people, or there are still people who is believing that the life on the earth thrived because of the third theorem, which is I'm going to represent for you guys right now. Okay, so let's head on to see what is that theory. The third theory, my dear children, is referred as the Cosmozoic theory. Cosmozoic theory. So in Cosmozoic theory, right, here the people or the scientists have declared that life on our earth came from outer space. Okay, life on our earth came from outer space. Okay, actually from a spaceship, right? In simple, we can say that aliens came to our earth and they have established new colonies, and those organisms evolved to create organisms who are now living on the earth. That was the right theory, which is that is the theory which is regarding the Cosmozoic. Those are the facts. That is the fact, main fact contained within the Cosmozoic theory. Okay, Cosmozoic theory. So, like I said, my dear children, Cosmozoic theory. This theory suggests that the living materials might have got established on Earth from a fallen meteor with living organisms, or by spacecraft from another planet. So, from a spacecraft from another planet. Okay, that means definitely they are mentioning about the aliens. So aliens, they have visited the earth and they have settled on the earth in creation of life. They are the ones who have evolved right now to create different organisms. This is the third theory related to the creation of life of the earth, my dear children. This is controversial. Actually, controversial means now here to disprove this theory, there is no evidence. To prove this theory, there is no evidence. Okay. However, let me give you some extra knowledge about this thing, my dear children. It is been assumed that Actually, there are some different kinds of proofs as well. If you go ahead with this process and check in the internet, you can check these things. Okay, so there are different proofs in order to show that the life has originated from an extraterrestrial life form that came to the earth from millions of years ago, right? There are like several supportive evidences. Actually, scientists are even for now doing several experiments and doing several expeditions in order to discover these things. So this is not been proved yet. Not been proved yet. Okay? And it's also not been disproved yet. So we won't be able to give out a certain idea about the truthfulness or the falsehood of the cosmozoic theory. Okay. However, my dear children, up to now it is not been proved. So this theory is also been neglected. Actually, it's not been neglected. Several experiments are going and several expeditions are also going to carry out in order to provide evidence for the cosmozoic theory. But however, it is still undergoing, right? Still undergoing. Okay, it's not been 100% proved yet. Okay, so here it is given, this theory has not been proved scientifically. Still, it's not been proved. Okay, but however, in the near future, right, in the future, these might change, right? These theories may change in the near future. Okay, so my dear children, this is the third, right, theory related to the origin of life on the earth. The third theory is Cosmozoic theory, right? Cosmozoic theory. So in Cosmozoic theory, people believe that life on the earth thrived mainly because of the extraterrestrial organisms or extraterrestrial or celestial objects that came to the earth with life. Okay, especially meteoroids or spacecrafts, right? So this is the Cosmozoic theory. Then the Cosmozoic theory can be illustrated like this. So this is that particular meteoroid or else a spacecraft which came to the earth like this. So in the earlier time, earth was like this, my dear children. When you take the shape of the earth, there was no continents, right? Continents were not separated, right? This entire continent was called as the Pangea, right? So it was a very large continent. Okay, it was the land area, the Pangean land area. So this land area was not separated into several continents like in nowadays. Okay, so an extraterrestrial meteoroid or else a spacecraft that has different kinds of organisms, microorganisms like this, has been crashed onto the planet Earth. Then by the evolution of these microorganisms, organisms were created on the earth. Okay, these different organisms created on the earth. However, my dear children, actually when you take the fallen meteoroid, there cannot be life on a meteoroid, right? There can't be any microorganism who is living on a meteoroid. It will not happen, right? It can't be. It's because when a certain meteoroid is going to fall down to the earth, what will happen? There going to be a huge impact. Okay, and that impact will definitely destroy. If there are organisms, then that impact will definitely destroy those organisms. That's one particular fact. And the other thing is that if a meteoroid came to the earth, we know, in order to give life, meteoroid should come through the space. You know that there is no survival conditions or there is no favorable conditions in the space. So definitely when passing by a greater distance through the space, these life forms definitely will get destroyed. And the other fact is that if a meteoroid is going to come and hit the planet Earth, you know that there is atmosphere within our Earth. So when these meteoroids are enter into our atmosphere, they will definitely burn out. Okay, so the temperature of the surface will get gradually increase, and this temperature will enough to kill or sterilized all the life forms within a meteoroid. Okay, and this meteoroid is going to hit, because of the impact, the other forms will also get killed for sure. So however, my dear children, these are several facts that I have given for you guys in order to disprove this thing. But however, we don't know, I mean, like, there can be other different kinds of advanced technologies, no? Okay, so we don't know actually. You know that even the spaceships who are exploring our universe, man-made one, artificial ones, even we have conquered the moon, no? So the people from that Apollo mission came to the Earth like a falling meteoroid. Okay, so because of the advanced technologies used by those spacecrafts, right, the people who are living inside the vessel came to the Earth without any trouble. So some might think that if they can come to the Earth from outer space, then why can't these meteoroids can't come? Okay, so sometimes whatever the entity, right, whatever kind of an entity is going to create a life bomb, it's going to put that thing into a certain vessel, and sometimes that particular entity may send these things to our Earth as well. It can be, right? We can't neglect these things because there is no certain proofs in order to disprove these things, right? Okay, so that's why I told you that this Cosmozoic theory is somewhat controversial, because there is no certain proof to disprove this thing. Okay, so this is the Cosmozoic theory, my dear children. So in Cosmozoic theory, right, what will happen here? They are explaining that life came to the Earth from a spacecraft or else from a fallen meteoroid. Actually, up to a certain extent, we can neglect the meteoroid, but the spaceship thing, we can't neglect that thing, right? Spaceship thing, we can't neglect. Okay, so therefore, this Cosmozoic theory, okay, Cosmozoic theory is a controversial theory, my dear children. It's not been disproved yet. Okay, right. So this is the third theory. But however, as there is no enough evidence, right, as there is no enough evidence, this theorem is not being proved yet. Therefore, we are not taking this into our consideration, my dear children. Okay, so first, second, third, all these theories we are not paying more attention for those theories. First theory is the special creation, spontaneous generation, Cosmozoic. All of these theories we are not paying a special consideration for these theories. We assume that these things are not being proved yet, so therefore we are neglecting it. Okay, then the final one, the last theory related to the origin of life. This theory is being scientifically proven, okay, by special conditions, by using special devices and doing several experiments. These things were proven scientifically. Okay, so therefore, my dear children, this is the theory, right? This is the theorem, the best theorem to explain the origin of life in our Earth. the best one. Okay, now let's head on to see what is that best theorem to explain the life of our Earth, right? Origin of life in our planet Earth. So this theorem is referred as the theory of biochemical evolution. Theory of biochemical evolution. Okay, so the theory of biochemical evolution, here biochemical, mainly these things or the life is originated because of chemical reactions that occurred within the surface of the earth. Okay, so these chemical reactions created DNA and other different kinds of amino acids and proteins which are essential to create the life forms. Then a cell has occurred, right? A small bacterial cell has occurred. From that bacterial cell, a unicellular microorganism was created. Then these unicellular microorganisms further evolved, dividing into branches to create all the organisms who ever to walk on the planet. This is what the biochemical reaction, biochemical creation or the biochemical evolution states. Okay, so this is the fourth and the final one, my dear children. So now let's see what are the contents of biochemical evolution. Okay, this theory confirms that at the beginning of the earth, the gases in the atmosphere reacted with each other and the ingredients that make life possible were formed. So, like I said, at the beginning of our earth or in the primitive earth, there was methane and hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide and other different gases. So mainly, my dear children, carbon was plenty available within the atmosphere and within the primitive earth. So now meteoroids come and hit on the earth, giving out the water, right? So then we discussed that different substances, minerals and chemicals and all these types of chemicals, this has got dissolved within this water, right? And it's like a nutritional soup right now. Okay, so my dear children, this nutritional soup, right, should have to obtain forms of different kinds of energies in order to break the chemical bonds between the substances and to form new substances or new chemicals in order to help in creating life. Okay, it is assumed that the energy is being obtained by the volcanic eruptions, solar radiation and from the lightning strikes. Okay, lightning discharges. So the biochemical evolution states that Earth itself created life forms. Okay, Earth itself created life forms because of the different types of chemicals contained within the surface of the earth. Okay, so those are the ones who are responsible in creation of DNA and other necessary components for the creation of life, right? So this theory confirms that at the beginning of the earth, the gases in the atmosphere reacted each other and the ingredients that make the life possible were formed. Okay, so those gases, they get collected and dissolved within a certain type of water. I mean, like there was water, plenty of water. So that water is finally creating necessary substances for the life. Okay, especially DNA and other proteins. So that is what do you mean by the biochemical evolution. Earth itself came to life. Okay, Earth itself created the life starting from a cell. It is believed that the energy required for this was supplied by electric discharges during lightning, eruption of volcanoes, and by ultraviolet radiation of the sun. Right? So you know that in order to create different other chemical substances, energy should be given. We have to provide energy. For a simple example, in order to burn fuel, we need to provide heat energy. Upon providing heat energy, a fuel will burn by reacting with oxygen, right? And it will create different other kinds of substances like carbon dioxide and water vapor. However, fuel itself will not be able to create carbon dioxide and water vapor. We have to provide heat energy. So in the same way, my dear children, there are different kinds of chemicals within the Earth's surface, but however, these things should react in order to create the chemicals which are important for the evolution of life. So, in order to create those chemicals, these initial chemicals, the reactants, should get different kinds of energies. So the energy requirement was fulfilled by volcanic eruptions, by solar radiation like light rays like ultraviolet rays. Okay, they contain huge amount of energy, light and heat both. And the other one is from the lightning discharges. Okay, so these chemicals contained within the surface of the earth, they got energy from volcanic eruptions, lightning discharges, and from solar radiation, and they converted into different chemicals that can create the life like DNA and other protein substances. So these materials dissolved in rainwater and collected with ocean water. So the materials then collected with rainwater and they fell down to ocean water. Okay, now like I said, my dear children, now this water which was on the surface of the earth, it's like a soup, right? And the specialty here is that this soup is now having plenty of substances that can create the life. I mean, like it's a pool of DNA and other types of proteins. Okay, so this pool of DNA and this pool of chemical substances that is enriched with different chemicals related to the life was referred as the primordial soup. So this mixture is known as the primordial soup. So primordial soup means it's the mixture of materials which are essential for the development of life. Okay, so these materials come and mixed with ocean water to create a mixture or a soup in our terms. So this soup is referred as the primordial soup. Okay, this mixture was referred as the primordial soup. So my dear children, this primordial soup contained several DNA particles and other essential proteins, amino acids, which are important in creating life forms. Okay, then what happened? Then my dear children, now when you take the primordial soup, it's like this. Volcanic eruptions, water falling from the sky or the rain, and the lightning strikes, all of these things help to create that primordial soup. Okay, so primordial soup, the creation can be illustrated like this. Okay, so this is how the primitive earth got the life in the first place, right? This is the theorem, the approved theorem in creation of life. So this is how the creation of primordial soup happened. Now let's go with the other things. The first living cell or the pre-cell appeared as a result of a biochemical reaction in primordial soup. Now what has happened, my dear children? These chemical substances, I told you that those chemical substances are enough to create a cell, a small bit of a cell. So once again, a simple chemical reaction has occurred, and this chemical reaction resulted a small bit of a cell, which was referred as the pre-cell, right? Pre-cell. It was the first and foremost life form on our earth, the pre-cell. So the first living cell or the pre-cell appeared as a result of a biochemical reaction in primordial soup. So within the primordial soup, as a result of a biochemical reaction, this thing has occurred. This pre-cell has occurred. Then the first organism was unicellular and was considered anaerobic and heterotrophic. Right. So the first and foremost organism who ever to create on planet Earth had these features. It was unicellular. It was unicellular. That means it contained only one single cell. Then anaerobic. What's the meaning of anaerobic? Anaerobic means, my dear children, it does not need oxygen in order to do the respiration. So like I said, in the primitive earth, there was no oxygen. Oxygen was not available at the primitive earth, right? Because there was no any organism who can do photosynthesis. In order to have oxygen, there should be organism who can do photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the main method which can release oxygen gas. So therefore, at the primitive earth, there was no oxygen. Okay, so the organism or the first and foremost cell which is created within the earth is not taking oxygen gas. So therefore, if a certain organism is not taking oxygen gas for the respiration, that particular organism is referred as an anaerobic organism. So this organism is unicellular and anaerobic. Next one, and heterotrophic. Heterotrophic means it depends on other food items. Especially this particular organism depend on the minerals and chemicals which is available in the primordial soup. Okay, so it was heterotrophic, right? Heterotrophic. So the first cell or the pre-cell had these features, my dear children. It was unicellular, it was anaerobic, and it was heterotrophic. Then scientists have experimentally shown that the first living cell was created by the primordial soup. So like I said, my dear children, scientists have proved this thing by using a special primordial soup. Okay, they have given the same kind of conditions to a particular vessel, and they have proved that when providing these chemicals and when providing these forms of energies, automatically DNA like substances and other different kinds of amino acids are getting created. Okay, so scientists have proved this thing experimentally. Right. So my dear children, as you can see here, right, for extra knowledge, you are given with a certain diagram, right? So this is that scientist, my dear children. This scientist was referred as the Stanley Miller, right? He was the scientist to successfully prove this theorem related to the biochemical evolution, right? But however, the two scientists, Haldane and Oparin, are the ones who put forward this biochemical evolution process or the biochemical evolution theory. Haldane and Oparin was the first and foremost scientist to put forward this theory of biochemical evolution, right? But my dear children, the thing is that those guys were unable to prove this thing. The scientist Stanley Miller was the scientist to prove this thing by using the things or the equipments and experiment carried out by in his laboratory. So this theory was scientifically proved by Stanley Miller by conducting scientific investigations in laboratory. So by doing scientific investigations in the laboratory, he proved the theory related to the biochemical evolution. So this is that particular scientist, my dear children, the scientist Stanley Miller. Okay. Remember, however, this theorem was put forwarded by two different scientists called Haldane and Oparin, right? So this is the experiment conducted by the scientist Miller, right? So as you can see here, he used the ocean water, right? Then from a heat source, he's going to heat it. Then you know that during that time also, what has happened? Due to having high amount of temperature, ocean water got evaporated. Then in the primitive earth, there were several gases like ammonia, then water vapor, methane, and hydrogen sulfide, and so on, and hydrogen also. So these are the primitive gases, right? So primitive atmosphere was provided. Then my dear children, by using certain electrodes, he is going to give electric sparks which is going to behave as lightning. So these chemicals then going to react because of the lightning. Then my dear children, they are getting condensed down from a cooling system and once again going to add with the ocean water. So he has observed that within this ocean water, once again, what has happened? The substances necessary for the life like DNA, amino acids and other chemicals is going to create. Okay. So by that way he proved that this system is going to allow in creating life forms, right? Chemicals needed for the life forms. So by that way he proved that the biochemical evolution of the organisms, right? Okay. So the first form of life on the earth is considered to be a simple unicellular bacteria. So the first and foremost cell was a simple unicellular bacteria. It was a bacteria, right? A simple unicellular bacteria. That pre-cell was the first cell which has got created. Okay, so the first and foremost form of life was considered as a unicellular bacteria. Okay, unicellular bacteria. Then the first photosynthetic organisms, unicellular algae were formed. After the creation of that particular bacteria, my dear children, what has happened? Okay, the next type of organism, next type of microorganism which can do the photosynthesis process has occurred or they were created. Remember that these organisms, these photosynthetic organisms were originated from the pre-cell or from the unicellular bacteria in the first place. So now my dear children, there is unicellular algae, right? So these algae are the ones who can do the photosynthesis. So plants are the ones, now we know about the plants, right? Plants are the ones who can do the photosynthesis. That's how we assume. But however, my dear children, the first and foremost organism which can create or which can do the photosynthesis is not the plant. It's not a plant. It's not a plant. It's an algae. Okay, so algae is the one which is going to create the photosynthesis in a huge extent within our earth also. right? More than 50% of the oxygen gas that we receive is obtained or is given out by the photosynthesis process of algae, not because of the plants, my dear children. Okay, so during the creation of life in our earth also, the first and foremost photosynthetic organism was algae. Okay, so the first photosynthetic organism, unicellular algae, was created. After that, a gaseous oxygen, right? After that, a gaseous oxygen contained in atmosphere was formed. So like I said, my dear children, after the creation of the first and foremost organism, the unicellular bacteria, photosynthetic organisms were evolved. These are algae. So these algae helped, okay, in creation of a oxygen contained in atmosphere, because when doing photosynthesis, you know that oxygen is going to expel. So because of that, oxygen has got entered to the atmosphere, right? So that's how oxygen came to our atmosphere in the first place. During the creation of our earth, right, there was no oxygen. After the creation of life forms on the earth, oxygen gas has got emitted. So therefore, our atmosphere received oxygen mainly because of the life forms who is living on the surface of the earth. Okay, then many changes took place for a long time period within the body of unicellular organisms, and multicellular organisms were born. Then after that, after the creation of unicellular organisms like algae and bacteria, right, several changes within their body structure, right, several changes within the body structure has appeared. Okay, then what has happened is they have divided into several branches in creating multicellular organisms. Okay, they have created different other branches, different other types of organisms during the creation of multicellular organisms. So different changes has occurred within the bodies of the organisms, within the bodies of these cells in creating multicellular organisms. Gradually, tissues, organs and systems were specialized within these multicellular organisms, and the world of animals and plants were created. Right. So my dear children, after that what has happened is multicellular organisms again developed. Okay, multicellular organisms again developed into several other types of organisms. They even developed into different kinds of tissues. They even developed different kinds of organs and systems in order to create the entire universe of animals that we are observing right now within our planet Earth. Okay, so the entire biosphere, all the organisms who is living within our Earth, planet Earth, was created from here, from the pre-cell, which was a unicellular bacteria. Then it developed into a photosynthetic organism like algae. Then from the algae, multicellular organisms were created. Then multicellular organisms again specialized into several other branches, creating organs, tissues and other facts to create different kinds of animals, my dear children. Okay, so this is how the evolution took place after the beginning of life. Okay, right. Then cnidarians, annelids and some arthropods are considered as the first multicellular organisms. So still we are in water, my dear children. Okay, still we are in water, because I told you that most of the areas of the earth is been flooded with water right now. Water is all around the earth. So within the primordial soup, the first cell has appeared. Okay, still the earth is having a flooded area with water. So my dear children, the first and foremost multicellular organisms should be aquatic. So the first and foremost multicellular organisms which was created within the planet Earth are also aquatic, but the specialty is that those are invertebrates. In order to have a vertebral column, they should further evolve, right? So first of all, simpler organisms are the ones which have been created within the earth. So these simpler organisms were cnidarians, annelids, and the arthropods. So cnidarians, annelids, and arthropods were the first multicellular organisms that was created within our earth. Okay, after the creation of those bacterials and the photosynthetic organisms, then my dear children, multicellular organisms were developed. The first multicellular organisms were cnidarians, arthropods, and annelids. Okay. Then the fish are considered as the first type of vertebrates. So the first and foremost type of vertebrates are the fish. It's very obvious, right? Because like I said, now the earth was flooded with water. So in order to develop a life form, that life form should be able to live within water. That means it should be an aquatic organism. So my dear children, the first and foremost vertebrate was a fish. Okay, it was a fish. So fish is an aquatic organism. So fish is the first and foremost vertebrate ever to appear on our planet Earth, right? So amphibians originated from fish. Now the next type was amphibians. Okay, next type was amphibians. So after the creation of fish, amphibians were created. So amphibians originated from fish. Amphibians can be regarded as the first vertebrates that entered into terrestrial environment. Now the other thing is that, my dear children, now when these organisms are getting produced within the aquatic environments, within that primordial soup, right, the competition is going to increase from time to time as there are plenty of organisms. So the organisms who are living within the primordial soup or within that water, they took a huge step. Some actually amphibians, they are the ones who took that step, not the fish but the amphibians. Amphibians means, in the sense, you know that amphibians can live in both land and water. So earlier they were living within the water, right? But however, they took the first step to come and conquer the land. Because now when the rain is going to pass by, the land has got appeared. Okay, so there was land also, but however within the land there was no organisms, because all the organisms were limited to the aquatic environments. So amphibians took the first and foremost step in order to conquer the land area. So they went on to the land area, right? They went on to the land area, and my dear children, they are the first and foremost terrestrial organisms. Okay, they are the first and foremost terrestrial organisms, right? So amphibians can be regarded as the first vertebrates that entered into terrestrial environments. So terrestrial environment, first vertebrate is the amphibians, right? when the competition is going to increase from time to time, amphibians took the first place or the first step in conquering the land, right? So earlier they were lived within the water. However, when increasing the competition, they landed on they came to the terrestrial lands. Okay, so amphibians are the first vertebrates to conquer the land or the terrestrial environments. Reptiles evolved as a result of gradual evolutionary changes occurred in amphibians. Actually, when now you know that amphibian is like a fish. Okay, earlier amphibians are way more similar to a fish. So when they came to the surface of the earth, gradually they had limbs. So it's like a walking fish, right? It's like a fish that has limbs in order to walk on the land. So gradually these limbs were, right, developed into several, other kinds of limbs and other different kinds of shapes, and the fish kind of nature contained within the body of organism was disappeared, and gradually the organism now evolved into a reptile kind of an organism, like an iguana or else a gecko kind of a shape. Okay, so reptiles were evolved, right, from the amphibians, my dear children. Fish resulted in creating amphibians. Amphibians helped to create a reptile. Now reptiles are the first and foremost well adapted terrestrial organism. Okay, well adapted terrestrial organism. Amphibians can live in both water and terrestrial environments. No, reptiles then evolved which can live on the land, which are well adapted to the land. Okay, so here it is given, the reptiles are completely adapted to the terrestrial life than amphibians. It is believed that birds and mammals evolved from reptiles during evolution. So during the evolution, my dear children, right, reptiles are the ones who have created birds and the mammals. It is assumed that mammals are the final form of life that came to the terrestrial environment. Okay, after the reptiles, birds were evolved, then after that, mammals. So mammals are the final form of vertebrate, right? So after the reptiles, my dear children, birds and mammals evolved from the after the reptiles, my dear children. So this is the order. From first of all, there were cnidarians, annelids and arthropods. Then after that, there was fish, the first and foremost vertebrate type. Then after that, fish were evolved into amphibians. Amphibians evolved into different kinds of reptiles. Then reptiles are the ones who created birds and mammals in the last place. Okay, so this is the order of evolution, my dear children. Okay, so the evolution of human. Now this is how the organisms were created, right, up to mammals. Now we are focusing about the evolution of human. So evolution of human took place about 12 million years ago. About 12 million years ago, my dear children, evolution of human took place. 12 million years ago. Modern human originated about 5 million years ago. The modern human, that means Homo sapiens sapien, right? The modern human originated like 5 million years ago. Okay, the evolution of human took place about 12 millions of years ago, but modern human, right, modern human evolved like 5 million years ago. gradually flora was created by photosynthetic algae in the oceans. First evolutionary less developed plants, then non-flowering plants, finally flowering plants originated. Accordingly, evolution of life has occurred at different times with several changes. And now, my dear children, what has happened after that? Gradually, flora was created by the photosynthetic algae. Okay, flora was created. Then these were changed in creation of less evolutionary developed plants. Okay, then after that, these less evolutionary developed plants created the non-flowering plants. Then from non-flowering plants, my dear children, flowering plants were created, like the monocot and dicot plants. Okay, so that photosynthetic algae created the flora, then less evolutionary plants, then non-flowering plants, then the flowering plants were originated on the earth. So as you can see here, the evolution, the process of evolution, the process of originating life on the earth, creation of different organisms were mainly because of, right, different changes that has happened for the starting cell or the pre-cell, right? It has happened as a result of changes that has happened to the pre-cell, right, or to the first organism. So accordingly, evolution of life has occurred at different times with several changes. So it has occurred with several changes in different time periods, my dear children. Okay, so we all came from one particular cell. However, it took several billions of years, and the specialty is that it haven't happened suddenly. It took several changes within several time periods. So this is how the evolution took place in our biosphere to create the entire living organisms. Okay, right. So as you can see here, right, the origin of life on the earth can be illustrated by using this figure. So this is that particular one single cell, right? So several branches were created in creating different kinds of organisms. Actually, these are the first and foremost types of multicellular organisms, cnidarians and arthropods, who ever to work on the planet, right? Then after that, the other branch has got created in creating different kinds of fish, right? The prehistoric fish. Then after that, amphibians, then reptiles, then the birds and mammals like this. As you can see, at the topmost corner, you can observe the modern human, right? The modern human. So in here, my dear children, you can observe the plants, the variation of plants, less evolutionary ones, then the non-flowering, then the flowering ones like this. Okay, so all the organisms within the figure, as you can see, there are all organisms, right? All the vertebrates are there, all the invertebrates are there, and also flowering and unflowering plants are there. So this is the whole biosphere. All the organisms evolved from this particular single cell, right? So this is the process of evolution, my dear children. Let me give you somewhat curious information, right? As you can see here, if all of us has evolved from one particular cell like this, if you check the DNA contents, right? If you check the DNA contents up to a certain level, at least up to a 50%, right? At least up to a 50%. Our DNA should be equal to other different kinds of organisms. Is it going to happen? Actually, it is. It provides that we are a sample, or we are a example, or we are a sample of the pre-cell. the DNA of human beings is matching 98%, more than 98% with the chimpanzees. The DNA of human beings exactly matching more than 50%, on each and every plant on our earth. More than 50%, right? So it provides that our ancestors, right? Our ancestor, for all of these organisms, there was a common ancestor. That common ancestor was this pre-cell. Okay? If you check the DNA, my dear children, our DNA is going to match, right? Our gene samples is going to match more than 50% for each and every organism who is living on the planet Earth. That's why when doing certain experiments related to cosmetic products especially, right? These experiments are being conducted for the animals first, like rats and rabbits. Then those products were given to human trials. It's because that those animals are having the similar nature like our skin. It's because that those animals were originated from the pre-cell like us. So when you take an animal, their structure, their DNA structure is way more similar, more than 50% similar to us. Alright. So it says that all of these organisms, all of the life forms on our planet Earth originated from one single particular cell. That cell is the pre-cell or the bacterial cell created from the primordial soup. So my dear children, by that way we can conclude that the process of evolution is true. Okay, process of evolution is true, right? Up to a certain extent we can provide a certain evidence. So this is how the life has got originated in our earth, my dear children. So from that, I'm going to wind up the session, the second chapter regarding the lesson, my dear children. In the next chapter, we'll be discussing further things related to the lesson. Especially in the next chapter, my dear children, we'll be mainly focusing about the evolution process. Okay, the process of evolution and about the fossils and other stuff in the next chapter. So I'll hope to meet you guys with our next chapter to discuss the evolution.
To watch these important lessons, subscribe to DP Education's YouTube channel right now. Click on the bell icon to stay updated on the latest lessons. Sri Lanka's largest free online school, DP Education.